I wrote this today, so I did not have time to memorize it, and my memory is awful, so I also apologize for that. But how's everyone doing? Good. Well, I'm on my last leg, as my dad would say. And so, but man, I got so tired of hearing that little catchphrase of my dad's. Every single time, it didn't matter where we ended up, it didn't matter even if the person, didn't matter if the person knew him or could even see his prosthetic leg, he would end up saying that damn catchphrase. I think he just ended up programming himself to say it. But while I was sick of hearing it, everyone who my dad would greet, they would be laughing and smiling every time. I think that was one of my favorite things about my dad, and how he helped everyone and a separate person other than himself always ran across his mind. Whether that help was through a direct influence by maybe lending out the back truck if someone needed to tote something in the back, or he gifted you that produce straight from Hagen, Georgia, or if you were lucky enough, butt plugs and little dildos that he would find off Wish.com. It is his helping hand and his sense of humor that really inspires and sticks with me. But of course, I'm sure that's the truth for most of the people here. I love my dad, and we're very lucky to have so many people around us that love him too. And last but not least, I'd like to give a few thanks from of my own. And first, I'd like to thank my mother for helping out for the memorial, and a huge thank you to Lucy, because she's been working real hard behind the scenes, and she's been basically planning the whole event, like my mom said. I would also like to thank y'all for making it out here. It means a lot, and I know it means a lot to Jimmy as well. And which goes perfectly to our final thank you, of course, to my dad, Jimmy Shuman. Thank you for blessing us with your life and presence, and all of the horrible and funny stories and jokes you've given us. And thank you for just being an amazing father.
Thank you, Flip. And before I get into my speech, I want to add that the hardest part for me writing this wasn't the sentimentality of or the emotions, but it was deciding what parts to share without it turning into the next Netflix comedy special. A friendly neighbor of ours reminded me that my dad liked to say, "What good are kids if you can't laugh at them?" To that, I'm sure that my brother and I did make my dad laugh, and I'd like to think that we made his life at least a little bit more enjoyable, but we were not the funny ones out of the family, and anyone here today would probably know that. He had the grandest and weirdest sense of humor. For example, we were shopping in Walmart together, just me and my dad, and while we were at checkout, we could hear a toddler in the background just throwing a tantrum and screaming. My dad leans down to me and goes, "Youngin, I like it when they scream." And that's what he told me. He told me that hearing screaming children brings him joy. And I said, okay. And we moved on throughout the day. Us offspring only got a fraction of that sense of humor, but I think that is okay. We got some of his less concerning traits passed down to us. I think that I received some of his storytelling abilities, and Flip definitely received a lot of his creativity and people personality. But the key word here is some. Unlike my father, I will never be able to make someone laugh on the 100th retelling of a story as I can on the first. And my favorite story of his was about this awful car he used to own. It was total POS by the time he got rid of it. And he purposely left the keys in the ignition, doors unlocked, with the windows rolled down, hoping someone would just steal it. Someone did break in, but they stole the lanyard off of his keys and left the keys in the ignition. Of course, only that would happen to him. Oh yeah, I lost my spot. And Flip has the charming people persona, which will get him far, I have no doubt. But as far as my father's, I am not sure. I cannot tell you the number of things that he got away with, nor the range, but I can tell you a few things that it included. Visiting my dad's hometown, I recently learned that he got out of a speeding ticket by explaining to the officer that he was just obviously passing an invisible car. The cop let him off. I can't think of anyone else that could have done that successfully, but that was him. That was my dad, Jimmy. He was a memorable and one-of-a-kind guy, and he was so memorable, in fact, that a common complaint from anyone in this family was that we cannot go anywhere without running into someone that knew him. My mom has lived in Gwinnett County for most of her life, yet the majority of the time she was with my father, they always ran into someone he knew, even though he did not grow up here. And my father was so memorable that when I was in 4th grade, a girl from the class next door to mine approached me during recess. She said, "Is your dad's name Jimmy?" I said, "Yes. Why do you ask?" She goes, "Oh, my mom had a crush on him in preschool." She wasn't even in my class. She wasn't. But she explained that her mom had recognized my last name from some sort of roster. And that was just the beginning. When I was a senior in high school, I was visiting a friend's Sweet 16 party. Her older brother's band was playing at the event. They were a loungy jazz group named Mr. Tie-Dye at the time. Seeing as it seemed fitting for my dad, I went home and told him all about this band. "Oh, you really like them? They were the perfect fit for you." He goes, "Oh, yeah, I know. Of course he did. Of course he did." I said, "How? How could this man know about this tiny college kid band when he hadn't even met the birthday girl or her family?" He told me, "I made the tie-dye that's on the cover of their album." Ladies and gentlemen, of course he did. One of the other members in this tiny college band had happened to be the son of one of my dad's best friends from college, and her son had taken one of the many shirts that my dad had given her and used that for the album cover. And while we are on the topic of t-shirts, thank you all so much for wearing your Jimmy appropriate attire. It's great to see everyone here. Yes, thank you, Beth. And it really was a great thing for our family. You know, we couldn't hold a funeral, but the day after my dad passed, we had so many people sending us pictures of all the shirts that they were wearing from him and said, "In solidarity of Jimmy." And it was just a great reminder of how loved and appreciated he was by everyone. And he loved giving out anything that made people laugh. That was what he did. But he also loved just giving in general. And he gave me the best childhood I could have ever asked for. Were there some questionable moments? Oh, absolutely. I still find that people are surprised, or even just worried, that my father reproduced. I still have cousins to this day that go, "How did you and your brother turn out so seemingly normal? How? What happened?" And having my dad as a parent involved the following. I asked him to drop off some supplies for a class party at school. He left me a roll of paper towels and 2 raw bundles of collard greens. For those that don't know, raw collard greens are bigger than you realize. They were about the size of my backpack, if not bigger, and that's what I got to walk around school with all day. During a trunk or treat event at our church, he covered the back of his truck with a tarp and had 3 large holes cut out of it. He had me hide underneath the dark tarp all evening so that any child who put their arm through the holes for candy, I could either grab them or dunk their hands into a bowl of some weird, wet, cold, chunky mush. I don't remember what he used. I think he might have used peeled grapes. I think there was Jell-O involved. I don't remember. Oatmeal. Yeah, oatmeal was one of my things. It was gross. It was disgusting. There were several kids that freaked out. They threw it back at me while I was hiding under the tarp. And all he could say was, "Good job, youngin'. You're doing good." And he also taught me all kinds of BS lies as a kid, but not just the normal ones like Santa Claus. I learned the word cooter when I was about 10, but not the way that you might think. I was at the mall with a friend and my parents. We didn't have cell phones, so my dad left me his little flip phone so that we could get in touch with my mom on where to meet and so. I kept getting these phone calls, but they weren't from my mom, so I just ignored them. We eventually ran into them while walking, and my mom looked at me pissed. She was like, "Why weren't you answering my phone calls?" I said, I was like, "You haven't been calling me. The only person that's been calling the phone was named Cooter." You could barely hear my mom slapping my dad because of how loud he was laughing in the middle of this mall. And my mom was just shaking her head in the corner. And the answer we got from him was, it's a type of turtle, youngin'. It's a type of And an eye roll from my mother. That's what we got as answers. And I didn't believe him, but that would all he would say. It's a type of turtle, youngin'. And for those of you that don't know, the brown river cooter is in fact a real turtle. And I know that because I did Google it later on. I did not trust him. He also convinced me that Chinese people could fly. He loved to watch Kung Fu movies. And when I was about 3 or 4, wee little Lucy, we were watching Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. I heard someone say, oh no, you were right. I asked him how all the people were jumping from roof to roof and doing all of these really cool tricks. And rather than explain how movies work, my father convinced me that Chinese people could fly. I believed it for longer than I'd like to admit, but because of that story, I also still think about all the other kids that ask my dad questions. I hope they aren't as gullible as I am. I am extremely gullible, unfortunately, and my dad took every opportunity with that growing up. When I was there, when my dad told a kid at church that his foot would grow back like a starfish, I saw him tell a kid that he just put his foot down and forgot where he left it one day. And she proceeded to search the house for him. He loved lying to children and seeing what they'd do. But I also know that my dad did it because he never wanted to make people worry. His sense of humor and ideas worried people enough on their own. Were there better ways to explain how he lost his foot to children than a shark attack? Yes, absolutely. But it worked for him. He did his damnedest to make sure no one ever worried about him, even till the day he died. Most, if not all, of my family are convinced that my dad at least knew he was sick well before he was on his deathbed. But would he have ever told us? No, not at all, because that would make us worry. Most importantly, it would make my mom worry. People love to question the type of woman that ended up with my dad. My dad claimed that he kept my mother drunk throughout the time they were together, and that's how he got her to marry him. And unfortunately, that does line up with the stories my mother tells me. My mom likes to remind me from time to time that my dad was homeless when they first started dating. He lived out of the warehouse that he worked in. And he never even proposed. He talked about buying a house and having my mom moved in. She said, fuck no, I'm not shacking up without a ring. And so he said, okay, you want a ring? And that was it. That was the proposal. They were an interesting match, but a good one nonetheless. Supportive as well. So supportive, in fact, here we go. My parents attended a close friend's birthday party a few years ago. There were lots of female dancers at this party, and somewhere out there, there's a video of my mother scooping up ones off of the floor and handing them to my dad so that he can throw them back at them. What a great team. They definitely made some good-looking kids, so I will give it to them. And I knew that as much as my dad mocked my mom by mouthing the words, blappy blah blah, when she spoke, he loved her till death. When I was in middle school, my father was going through a lot of his health issues. There were staph infections, broken bones, a neck and spinal surgery, a stroke, probably something else I forgot. And my dad decided to talk to me, his 13-year-old daughter, about him dying because he didn't want his wife to worry. Rest assured, I do know that my parents had discussed what they wanted after death, but it was mostly the practical things. I'm not sure if he really thought he was dying, but just in case, he didn't want to make my mom worry. He always had to make jokes. Even when they amputated his foot, he did feel a whole lot better, mind you, but the first thing he did was post, most people get a tree for Christmas. I got a stump. He also made us take him to IHOP as soon as he got out of rehab. The majority of the servers did not get the joke. They were just concerned for him. And even as my father had started to get really sick in the last year, I had dropped him off at his doctor's appointment, and while I was there, he said, "Youngin, I want you to go out and buy a bouquet of flowers and take them to your mom at work, and write, 'Sorry I stink,' on the flowers." And we now realize that he had just been apologizing for needing extra care now that he was sick. When he asked Flipper Eye for helping to move him and get him things, he kept trying to give us money. We now realize that he had been trying to compensate us for needing extra care now that he was sick. Before I helped carry him to the car for his last trip to the hospital, he kept asking for his checkbook. It was empty and I told him we'd refill it when he got back. We now realize that he was trying to prepare us and support us now that he was extra sick. Besides the jokes, the support my father gave was also unmatched. He was there for you no matter what, as long as you didn't need him there on time. And I know that for many of us, it doesn't feel too real, and I can truthfully say that this was the only time that my dad left too early. Since his passing, my family has taken in another son. Paul and Flip graduated, and Flip turned 18. My mom got a great new job offer that she's super excited for, and I've started on my senior thesis and got bangs. With all of these changes, it's been difficult, especially with my mother, my brother, and my own biggest support system gone. But I'd like to thank everybody here for all of the love and support. Due to COVID, it was unfortunate that we could not hold a funeral, but I believe it worked out better in the end. I think anybody here can agree that the last thing my dad would have wanted was for us to all sit in our Sunday best, moping in a dark corner.
Amen to that.
This celebration is meant to honor my father, Jimmy Shuman, in true Jimmy fashion. There's friends and family, Coca-Cola, funk music, and nanner pudding. Plenty of inappropriate stories too. Y'all have no idea how many people text me and said, I have stories of Jimmy, but they're not very appropriate. We know. All of us have a dildo-related story, all of us. It's okay, share them all. And what more could he have wanted? Thank you all for coming here tonight.